Hi guys, welcome to another video of FunZone. If you are not a subscriber, make sure to subscribe to FunZone by pressing the red button, and also don't forget to press the bell icon. You will be able to get the notification as soon as we upload new videos.
Roblox Islands weapons. A weapon is a tool that is used to attack and kill enemies like slimes, buffalkers, wizard lizards, and scorps. There are several weapon categories. Melee, weapons that are used by hitting the enemy with the weapon. Ranged, weapons that fire projectiles. Slime, weapons that require materials found on Slime Island. Buffalker, weapons that require materials found on Buffalker Island. Wizard, weapons that require materials found on Wizard Island. Desert, weapons that require materials found on Desert Island. Secret, weapons that require a blueprint. Legendary, weapons that are very challenging to obtain. Unique, weapons that have a unique feature. Each weapon has a critical chance of approximately 25% and a critical multiplier of 1.5x damage. This doesn't apply to weapons in the ranged category. Wooden sword. The wooden sword is a weapon that can be crafted with 20 wood in a basic workbench and higher. It was the only weapon in the game until the May 17, 2020 update, which added new weapons. It has chipped sides, which may indicate that it had been hammered rather than sharpened. This was the first weapon introduced in the game. The wooden sword has the ability to do sweep or splash attacks, hitting multiple mobs at once with one swing, unlike the Gilded steel hammer and the iron war axe. This is the only item in the basic workbench that only allows you to craft one at a time. This is the only weapon that can be crafted using a basic workbench. Iron War Axe. The Iron War Axe is one of the 9 weapons in the game, introduced on the May 17, 2020 update. It can be crafted with the anvil using 3 crystallized iron, 1 steel rod, and 40 iron. Damage. The Iron War Axe deals 16 base damage against enemies. Critical hits deal 24 damage. Unfortunately, this item cannot be used as an axe to destroy wood blocks, despite its name. There is a swishing noise that plays whenever the axe lands a critical hit. Aquamarine sword. The Aquamarine sword is a weapon that was duped a lot and introduced in the July 11, 2020 update. The Aquamarine sword has further range than the Gilded steel hammer, however, has lower damage and attack speed. The Aquamarine sword also has a strong knockback effect to prevent the enemies from getting closer, similar to the wooden sword's knockback. Aquamarine sword can be used to auto-farm buffalkers thanks to that knockback effect and its long range. The Aquamarine sword can be crafted at the anvil using 200 aquamarine shards and 2 pearls. Damage. The Aquamarine sword deals 18 base damage against mobs. Critical hits deal 27 damage. This is one of 6 legendary weapons, the others being the Gilded steel hammer, the Tidal Spellbook, the Vamp bow, the Rageblade, and the Spellbook. This was the second legendary weapon added to the game, the first being the Gilded steel hammer. The Aquamarine sword is the 4th best melee weapon in game. Gilded steel hammer. The Gilded steel hammer is a melee weapon dealing the 4th highest damage available in Islands, with the Spellbook and the Tidal Spellbook being second, and the Vamp bow being first. This is also the weapon with the highest melee damage. However, this has less knockback and a shorter range than the Aquamarine sword. It is crafted in an anvil. The Gilded steel hammer can be crafted in the anvil using 5 gilded steel rods, 40 gold, and 1 buffalker crystal. Damage. The Gilded steel hammer deals 25 base damage against mobs. Critical hit deals 37.5 damage. In total, this item costs about 140 gold, less than the Gilded steel pickaxe and Gilded steel axe. The recipe adds up to 140 gold, 1 buffalker crystal, and 125 steel ingots. Before July 11, also known as the Aquamarine update, this weapon was the only weapon that has a special animation in the game. This is also the only hammer in Islands currently, and is the strongest melee weapon. This is one of the 6 legendary weapons in the game, others being Spellbook, Rageblade, Aquamarine Sword, Tidal Spellbook, and Vamp Bow. Spellbook. The Spellbook is a ranged weapon that was introduced on the July 17, 2020 update. When used, a fireball will shoot horizontally in the direction the player is facing. It has a cooldown of 1 second, and does 60 damage. The Spellbook deals 60 base damage against mobs and cannot land critical hits, however it can send enemies flying with a 15% chance. Strength potions do not apply to this weapon nor any ranged weapon. Before July 20, 2020, the Spellbook dealt 25% of a mob's current health and were unable to defeat enemies. The Spellbook's projectiles can collide with a wizard lizard's projectile, causing one or both projectiles to explode mid-path. The Spellbook can fire through terrain and island parts, but does not fire through game-generated structures. Despite exploding upon disappearing, the fireball doesn't deal area damage, as this doesn't for the Tidal Spellbook. This is one of the only weapons currently in-game that can be used to craft something, the other being the artifact bow. The texture was changed on July 25, 2020, most likely to make it look more different to, at the time, the newly released Tidal Spellbook. This is one of the 5 weapons that cannot deal critical hits, the others being the Tidal Spellbook, Artifact Bow, Vamp Bow, and Basic Bow. Unlike the Tidal Spellbook, it can only hit one target at a time due to the fact that it has no AoE damage. Tidal Spellbook. The Tidal Spellbook is a weapon added in the July 25, 2020 update. The recipe for the Tidal Spellbook is unlocked by using a Tidal Spellbook blueprint on an anvil. The blueprint is dropped by wizard lizards. Strength potions do not apply to this weapon. The AoE radius seems to reach about 7.5 to 10 studs. Before the Tidal Spellbook was added, the Spellbook had the same texture as the Tidal Spellbook, until it was changed in the July 25, 2020 update. The Tidal Spellbook was the first weapon that required a blueprint to craft, the second being the Vamp Bow, third being the Rageblade. Despite having a huge explosion once it despawns, it doesn't affect mobs. Same goes for the Spellbook. The Tidal Spellbook is the only weapon to reuse an old weapon texture. The Tidal Spellbook is the first ever and only weapon to deal splash damage. It can be an efficient alternative to the Vamp Bow, as it is a suitable weapon for players that lack arrows or have difficulty aiming, thus not much people likes to use it. Using the Tidal Spellbook's AoE, or area damage, you can easily kill multiple slimes or buff alkers at once. The Tidal Spellbook used to be called the secret weapon, although this changed after many people obtained it. This is one of the 5 weapons that cannot deal critical hits, the other 4 being the Spellbook, Vamp Bow, Artifact Bow, and the Basic Bow. This is one of the 2 weapons to have another weapon in its crafting recipe, the other being the Vamp Bow. This weapon was massively duplicated and the value of the item fell dramatically. The same thing happened with Vamp Bows and Starfruit Seeds. This made it worthless, and is a common drop on late game drop parties. There are some bugs that people can't make damage when they attack. This is one of the 6 legendary weapons in the game. Despite it looking like it is a fireball, it is water, but its sound is ice breaking. So, it is one of the most confusing out of all of the weapons. Basic Bow. Ranged weapon that shoots arrows. The Basic Bow is a long-ranged weapon that was introduced on the August 9, 2020 update. The Basic Bow is made out of 100 wood at an anvil. You need arrows to use a bow, one being consumed on use. The damage the bow does is based on how long you charge it, dealing from 35 to 60 damage. Arrows can be made using 1 wood and 4 stone, giving you 2 arrows per craft. The Basic Bow is the weakest bow and ranged weapon in the game. This is one of the 3 bows in the game, the other 2 being the Artifact Bow and the Vamp Bow. This is also one of the 5 weapons that cannot deal critical hits, the other 4 being the Tidal Spellbook, Artifact Bow, and the Vamp Bow. There is a bug that makes the player shoot the arrow out of their head to the right of your avatar. It happens when you walk and shoot at the same time, as the arrows disappear when they hit an object, and that object can be you. However, there's a way to fix it, simply unequip it and then equip it again. On first-person view, the arrow will also shoot out of the head, making it hard to hit enemies. Artifact Bow. The Artifact Bow is a ranged weapon that was introduced in the August 9, 2020 update. It can be crafted with 3 ancient slime strings and a hardened bow limb at an anvil. The Artifact Bow is one of the 3 bows in Islands, the other 2 being the basic bow and the Vamp bow. It is one of the 2 weapons that can be used to make another weapon, the other being the Spellbook. It is a ranged weapon, and one of the 5 weapons that cannot deal critical hits, the others being the Tidal Spellbook, Basic Bow, and Vamp Bow. This is the only ranged weapon that is non-legendary that beats a legendary, the Tidal Spellbook. Vamp Bow. The Vamp Bow is a long-ranged weapon added in the August 9, 2020 update. A Vamp Bow blueprint is required to unlock this weapon, similar to the Tidal Spellbook. After unlocking this weapon, it can be crafted in an anvil. The ingredients needed are 1 Artifact Bow and 1 Ruby Scorp Stinger. It does 50 to 77 damage per shot, depending on how much the bow is drawn back. It also has the ability to take health from the opponent and heal the user. Whenever a hostile mob is hit with an arrow, a red beam appears between the player and the mob, healing the player 10 to 15% HP. This weapon is currently the best weapon in the game in terms of individual damage, while arrows are still needed to use it. Although being the best weapon in the game, most people sell it for less than the Tidal Spellbook because of dupe glitches, hacks, etc. This is also one of the 3 bows in the game, the other 2 being the Artifact Bow, and the Basic Bow. This is one of the 5 weapons that cannot deal critical hits, the others being the Basic Bow, Artifact Bow, Tidal Spellbook, and Spellbook, and itself, Vamp Bow. Some would argue that the Tidal Spellbook is a better weapon than the Vamp Bow, since the Tidal Spellbook is slightly cheaper, has AoE damage, easier to aim and doesn't require ammunition. Though Vamp Bow's lifesteal ability, and having higher overall damage output, makes them arguably equal in strength. As such, the Tidal Spellbook is a good alternative to Vamp Bow when the player does not have access, or is playing on mobile. Since it is a ranged weapon, the damage is not increased whenever a player drinks a strength potion. This is the second weapon to require a blueprint, the first being the Tidal Spellbook. The third being Rageblade. Like all bows, when holding it out, players go to shift lock mode. The Vamp Bow is the strongest weapon in the game. The Vamp Bow, Starfruit Seeds, and Tidal Spellbook were able to be duplicated since the introduction of the /reset command. This made it worthless, and is an uncommon drop on late-game drop parties. Rageblade. The Rageblade is a weapon that was introduced in the October 3, 2020 update. A blueprint is required to craft this, which has a low chance from killing a buff alker. The Rageblade is a katana-type weapon in appearance that sits on a player's shoulder. It hits a base 15 damage with a critical hit of 22.5 damage. After roughly 10 consecutive hits, the sword turns red and starts to emit flame particles, a unique weapon particle, and the weapon attack speed increases. Because of its fast attack speed, strength potions are very powerful with this weapon. The Rageblade can be crafted in the anvil using 100 red bronze ingot and 20 maple wood. Players must have the Rageblade blueprint to be able to craft it. The blueprint has a 0.02%, 1 in 5,000 chance, of dropping from a buff alker. This is the third weapon in the game to need a blueprint to unlock the crafting recipe for a weapon, the other 2 being Vamp Bow and Tidal Spellbook. It is possible to fly on buff alker by jumping on one and attacking it non-stop, allowing players to fly. A little damage will be taken, and it only works with the Rageblade, due to its fast swing cooldown and good knockback. It does the least damage of the 3 blueprint weapons, the strongest being the Vamp Bow. But need arrows and Rageblade have short swing cooldown. The Rageblade is the only weapon that requires a blueprint that can deal critical hits. The Rageblade has a lower mob damage than the Gilded Steel Hammer but has a higher potential DPS, as when heated up, mobs can be hit 4 times in a second. The average DPS of the Rageblade when heated is around 30 to 50. These resembles a katana, a type of sword from ancient Japan. In total, it requires need 20 maple wood, 200 gold, and 3000 copper to make one Rageblade. This is added that players will need 500 copper and 5 steel rod for the copper press, 2500 steel for the rod factory mold and 11,250 copper for the steel press. An additional 5,000 steel ingots for the plate factory mold. 6,250 copper and 5,625 steel ingots are required for a red bronze refinery, so a total of 18,000 copper ingots and 18,875 steel ingots are required to prepare making a Rageblade, making it very expensive.